Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for Marvel's Inhumans' first two episodes, Behold the Inhumans and Those Who Would Destroy Us. And I don't really know how to feel about this show yet, because even though it was two episodes put together for 2 hours, I felt it would have been better yet if it had been just combined with what was happening in it and just condensed into like 1 hour. Not some events happen in it, but not a lot, and some of the characters just, nothing is truly really done. And the only ones that really deeply dove into, at least, are like Black Bolt, Medusa, and Maximus. Other than that, I don't know why this series exists. That's the biggest issue. I mean, I've watched these two episodes, and I'm like, what is this bringing that S.H.I.E.L.D. hasn't already done with the Inhumans, and to a better degree? So, of course, we start off, and we're seeing, like, the moon and everything, and then we go to Earth, and we're on the island of Oahu, and we're in Hawaii, and we're seeing this girl kind of, like, running away from these guys. She's got, like, these freaky eyes. We're like, okay, she's got to be an Inhuman. She meets up with this kind of, like, other dude, like, Triton, and he's, like, kind of explaining, listen, I can take you to safety and all that. So they start trying to book it from these guys who we don't have any clear idea of who they are, who they work for at this point. But the girl gets shot, and the other dude gets pretty much forced to a point where he's really injured and then just pretty much falls off a cliff into the ocean. And of course, they radio in that they killed him, and it's like, okay, that's an interesting setup, but it was kind of like lagging. You're like, okay, it's supposed to be more of like an action intense scene, but it really didn't feel that intense or whatnot. It's just, I don't know. This whole show is kind of like strange with its pacing. So then we get up to Black Bolt and Medusa in bed, and these are the two. This is the king and queen of the Inhumans from the comic books, and they rule over Adelan, and I think that they did a pretty good job of like bringing them forward and presenting them in a pretty good way, because Black Bolt is an interesting character because he cannot speak, because if he does, his power is to, when his voice is so strong that it like can kill people and destroy things. He's like an Omega level Inhuman. And Medusa pretty much has to interpret for him, and seeing him do sign language, like, that's a pretty interesting take for a character. So they're in bed, they're kind of like doing their thing, and his comlink's beeping, and she's like, no, forget about that. Uses her hair and to like pick it up and put it on another nightstand, so that way he like focuses on her. And I thought they did a pretty good job with her hair. This is pretty much for a TV show's budget. It isn't as crappy as it could have been, but of course, some people will still complain about it. I think that it probably would have been a better job if we just took this whole scenario and probably put it on the movie. But with what they were doing, I think she's got pretty good effects for her hair to actually show that it's pretty much a part of her and an organism almost unto itself that she can like control. So she's like, all right, we're the king and queen, we can do what we want and everything. So they kind of like bang it out, and then we get dressed and we like look over the city of Adelan, which I've seen kind of like other TV shows make cities look more populated and more living. This just looked drab and kind of like they were just doing it. I mean, the architecture looks interesting, but it still doesn't look like a city that somebody would live in. It just looked like a CGI representation of a city. And it's just like, okay. So of course it like pans out and we see that we're on the moon and that there's this bubble around it kind of shielding and protecting everything. So it's like, okay, cool. So of course then we get to the kind of B storyline, if you can call it a B storyline, where a rover pretty much starts bumping into it and one of the Inhumans breaks it, and they're trying to go over the footage, and it's like, I think that's a hook. And of course, the person piloting it then goes to this episode and the next, pretty much trying to figure out how a hoof or whatnot had destroyed it, and people thinking that she's crazy. But there's not enough time throughout the 2 hours focused on them to show that these people are thinking that she's crazy and losing her mind to stress. I'm like, listen, I can understand if the picture was kind of like grainy or whatnot, but you can clearly tell that something decided to say, fuck this rover, and stepped on it. Okay, this isn't like that. She was bumping into something, which means she couldn't have fallen on anything, which means if something had like, she couldn't have fallen off a cliff, she couldn't have gotten into a ditch, you would have seen a rock pretty much come at it from somewhere to kill it, and it's like, okay, I was just like, alright, where is this going? It's like, I don't mind the character, but it's like, you're doing nothing with it? Okay. So, of course, we then get to Black Bolt and Medusa kind of like walking around, walking in the garden. Black Bolt points to a guy and tells him to come with him, signs and everything, and they kind of go underground. We are introduced to Karnak, who is one of the other characters that not much is done with. He's basically one of the Royal Guard kind of guys, pledged to protect Black Bolt and the royal family, and that's about it. And at first, we don't quite exactly get what his inhuman power is, but as we get through, I think it is something to deal with time, space, and kind of like spatial awareness, because as they're going through with this kind of stuff, he's talking about like the end of the universe and seeing that, and seeing like in a one scene as they go forward, they're like having a meal, and of course this serving girl is kind of like giving him the googly eyes, and he's like, oh, I'll just tell you how this ends out. It'll be 2.5 days pretty much, and then just proceeds to pretty much cockblock himself. So of course they're talking about how they had gotten all these guys together. We got the Gorgon guy, who is the dude with the hooves, talking about the rover and all that, and how they're like, the humans are going to find us. What are we going to do? And we find out that the dude he pointed to was Maximus's brother, and he is not an Inhuman. He is actually human, because they tried to do Terran Genesis on him, didn't work, and he doesn't have any powers or anything. Which, outside of the royal family, as we learn throughout the rest of the 2 episodes, pretty much makes you a slave in their caste system, where you're pretty much put in the mine. So it's like, shit, that's not good. So, of course, Maximus is trying to push the point home that it's going to come to a war either way, and that they need the room on Earth. And of course, Black Bolt's like, no, trust your king, move on with this. So, of course, we know that that isn't going to really sit well with Maximus. And we see this kind of going forward as we then get to a Inhuman Terran Genesis ceremony. We see this, like, boy and girl, I think they're like brother and sister. It's not really clearly defined, but of course, they've got this dude who's like the head of the genetic council, which sounds pretty kind of nutty. It's like, what the fuck? Okay. So, they're like in charge of, I guess, making sure that the genes are okay, and that I guess they have an idea of powers and all that, of who's doing what. So, of course, boy and the girl get in their chambers, they got the crystals taken out, and they go through Terran Genesis. One has an immediate reaction and has butterfly wings. They're like, okay, you're good. The other guy doesn't, he's like, I feel normal. But he's touched by Maximus, and it's like, whoa, what's going on? Because he then starts kind of like telling him about things, and we find out later on throughout the episode that he has gained the power to see the future of, I guess, the person that touches him. So it's like, okay, because it's not immediate what's going on, because he's like, I don't know what's going on, and then he kind of has like a seizure thing, and he warns him about snakes and being thrown up against a wall. It's like, okay, we'll talk about that later. So of course, we had also introduced to Medusa's sister Crystal, who uses Lockjaw to get into this ceremony because, of course, you need, I guess, the royal family for everybody going through Terran Genesis. I don't know. But it's like, alright, she's got at least a little bit better kind of characterization than Karnak and Gorgon because they're just like typecasted at the moment. Not much done with them. She, of course, is just being a princess, and later on we learn some more stuff about like her parents and everything as Maximus tries to get her to his side. So, of course, we see Maximus giving his speech to those of the lower class in the lower caste system, kind of like pretty much rallying his like forces to a degree, kind of getting public support on his side because people are kind of like pissed off about what Black Bolt's doing because of how small and confined they are and how they are forced to do menial labor. So, of course, we get to the point where they are having their meal together and Maximus comes in and talks about what happened to Trident, and he's like, why did you keep this in silence? And of course that brings in the whole thing from S.H.I.E.L.D., where the water supply has been contaminated, more and more people are being reactive to the Terran, and getting through Terran Genesis through the water supply, so he's pretty much trying to bring everybody back that he can, even though they don't have enough space on the moon to hold these people. And of course, that pisses off Gorgon, and he goes off to try and rescue Trident and all that. And of course, at first he's going with a gun to try and pretty much figure out what's going on. But Black Bolt's like, no, this is going to be a rescue mission. Just go do what you kind of need to do. Alright. So we then also kind of get some kind of like background a little bit on Black Bolt as Black Bolt goes into like a meditation chamber to kind of think about what's going on. Medusa, we kind of see a flashback of a young Medusa going in and telling him that she's not afraid of him and all that. It's like, okay, that's kind of cool, but what is that? It was so short and everything, and we still don't know that much about the characters that it really doesn't provide us that much information, at least at this point. So, of course, she's pretty much trying to leave, and then Maximus is telling her to be his queen, and, of course, this pisses her off, and she, of course, uses her hair to slam him up against the wall, and now Maximus is like, oh, he could see the future. I need to get that dude on my side. So, of course, as things start moving forward, we see that Maximus is using this one guard, Arn, who will be important because she helps him with his coup eventually, and nothing much is really done with her either. We aren't really that exposed to what her power is until the end of the second episode, and if that's the case, why didn't anybody kind of like know about her power? Because we find out at the end that she can at least has very fast healing if she kind of like concentrates or whatnot. So it's like, okay. So, that's mainly kind of where it kind of like wraps up a little bit. We see that Gorgon is kind of like searching and trying to figure out where Triton is. And of course, then, as we see that Maximus has pretty much used Arn and pretty much used her to take out the head of the Genetic Council because Maximus was trying to get him to be on his side. He's like, alright then. And shit, it's like, what the hell? So, of course, he then radios into the people that were chasing the girl, and we find out he has been employing them and sends them after Gorgon. So it starts this whole kind of like event structure going on that he starts his coup going. We see Gorgon pretty much fends off the people on Earth using his kind of animal powers because he has enhanced senses and enhanced strength to kind of like push out like a kind of shockwave. And Of course, we see that Karnak is just trying to be taken out by the guards that Maximus has sent, and we see his spatial powers and everything kind of used because we think that he's dead, but we see him kind of like going back through and being able to engineer a situation where he survives. He tries to get the crystal to get everybody kind of like out of Adeline at the moment, using Lockjaw the dog. And I think they did a pretty good job with Lockjaw because the CGI is pretty good with him. He doesn't look too terribly out of place. So then they just start bouncing around pretty much trying to get everybody out. Lockjaw takes Karnak to Earth, puts him like out in the middle of nowhere. Eventually we get Black Bolt kind of teleported away as well because Maximus goes into his chamber and he's about to use his power to kill Maximus when Lockjaw takes him away and puts him in downtown, like, into downtown Honolulu, Hawaii, and it's like, okay. And they're about to get Medusa, and Maximus does a really shitty thing and pretty much buzzes her hair, which, of course, that is a part of her, a living part of her, and she, of course, said that if you do this, I will never forgive you. So she gets taken away. They then get Crystal into Black Bolt's chamber, and Lockjaw's pretty much trying to get her out. But of course, this one Inhuman is able to subdue Lockjaw, so he then pretty much has her under house arrest and tries to get her to see his side of the story and everything. Pretty much saying that this would have been what her parents wanted and died for. And she's got like two kind of Inhuman powers. I guess one of her hands has like ice powers, and one other of her hands has flame kind of powers, or something to that effect, because she shoots at Arn as she's bringing food in, and it breaks the whole kind of tray and everything. And she's like, well, I hope you're not hungry. And she's like, oh, there's a comm link, and uses that to try and get in contact with Medusa to figure out what's going on, because at this point Medusa is able to kind of like get on a bus to get to civilization as she's trying to find Black Bolt. And then, of course, she's like, well, Arn left that behind because she's that smart, so she's been tracking this. So, of course, Medusa then breaks that and kind of like does nothing, waits at the bus stop, essentially. So then we get to see that Gorgon pretty much makes contact with these surfer dudes because he had went into the water to try and find Triton, even though he has hooves and wouldn't be able to swim well. And it's like, I don't care about this dude. So, okay, he's pretty much calls Maximus and says, I'm leaving this open so that you can come and fight me. It's like, okay, alright, we'll have to see that eventually. And we also saw Karnak pretty much trying to get to civilization, but he falls down and bangs his head, and evidently that, like, discombobulates him or whatnot because he starts going around in circles, so that does nothing. Black Bolt, pretty much we start getting an idea of what his physical prowess is, and that he gets into a store, tries to get Earth clothing, leaves the store, takes out a security guard, and is able to take down police officers as well, but not before he gets hit and kind of he lets a gas escape and it throws a car. And of course, they take him to the police station and they're thinking he's being a freak and an asshole, but he, of course, there's a pretty cool scene where he is able to get out of the cuffs and they're like, holy shit. He's like, I'm cooperating. Don't know what to do. So of course, he had his communicator and was able to get some communication going with Medusa, because at this point Medusa had tricked Arn to finding her at the bus station and stabbed her. Now, we thought she was dead, but of course, towards the end of the episode, we see that she heals herself and calls Rebecca. So Medusa had used Arn's comlink to get in contact with Black Bolt, saying that she will try and find him and all that, and he's just going through the Earth process of being under arrest and everything. It's like, okay. That's pretty much everything that happened. We'd seen that the lady that was in charge of the rover had figured out what was going on because she pretty much decided to take time off and was getting into a taxi and saw the stuff that was going on the screen. So evidently she's going to be involved or something. And it's like, okay, Black Bolt was interesting and Medusa was interesting and Maximus was interesting in these two episodes, but Karnak and Gorgon and Crystal and pretty much everybody else was just like, okay. because Maximus had to deal with a lot of stuff, trying to get everybody to his side, make sure that the Genetic Council wasn't going after him after the fact that he had killed the head dude. Of course, they don't know that, but he was able to touch the guy that is able to see the future, and he's like, hey, they are conspiring against you. So I like what they've done with Maximus because he is not shown to be just a complete mustache-twirling villain where he's being evil for the sake of being evil. He does have goals that can be seen as trying to be good, of like helping people and helping his people. Now granted, it's the means of which he's going to be doing that which can create the good conflict and tension. I just don't see why this show really needs to exist. I mean, I'm intrigued to see Black Bolt and Medusa fighting against Maximus, but it's almost like everybody else is like an afterthought or like archetypes that are just being built around to fill out a show and pad out an hour almost. And like, I'm losing S.H.I.E.L.D. coming back early for this. I'm like, Now granted, it could get better, but these first 2 episodes do not fill me with the confidence that I would like. I mean, I don't mind this being kind of like a one-shot kind of thing for these 8 episodes, and then we don't really see anything else again, because I would rather see the Inhumans and stuff in S.H.I.E.L.D. as it's done better than just here, because granted, we haven't even really seen any much more interesting Inhuman powers. And being on a TV show, they're going to be kind of limited in what they can do. That's why I was kind of intrigued when they were going to be doing it as a movie, where it would be kind of, I don't know, similar to a Star Wars movie, where you could just do a vast array of different powers and all that with what can be done. Here, you're really limited in what budget you can do and what prosthetics you can do as well, because, again, in movies, you could do really different, crazy kind of makeups and stuff, whereas here, that budget, of course, is lesser, and you kind of want to keep them on a more humanoid level rather than a weird, like, you can't go complete Groot. You can't have, like, a tree dude, at least as well done on a TV show. Now, granted, they could prove me wrong and put a pretty cool tree, crocodile, whatever kind of blob dude in there, and I'd be like, okay, that's cool, that's different, that's kind of what we want to see on the Inhumans, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I hope that they really just narrow the focus to these 8 episodes of Black Bolt and Maximus and their fight and their understanding of what needs to happen to protect the Inhumans. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments while on the 2 episodes. Tell me what you guys think on tongue tie. Those are my thoughts on these 2 episodes. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.